So this is our team, and we are Callum, myself, Miriam, and Mohammed, Paula, Poliana, as well as husband. Today, our project is focusing on the Somali culture and Somali traditions. So the project title is Horse Yard. As we go further, we'll definitely understand the meaning behind it. But horse means in Somali language, shade, and we're aiming to have a sustainable shelter system for the displaced Somali communities.
I think we lost you.
Yeah. Did we lose Mariam?
Mariam, we lost you.
Sorry, technical issues. I think we're back now.
Yeah, can hear you.
Thank you. Yes, looking at the existing realities, once we have seen the shelter profiles of all the three scenarios, it was very obvious that the current condition had some problems. We tried to deal with those problems and somehow link them back to the communities that are existing in these spaces. For example, one of the most common point was lack of social areas or community-driven spaces. The second issue was lack of unsafe shelter environment for the entire community. And the third one was, of course, we had extreme environmental solutions. We had extreme environmental and harsh conditions to deal with, such as the different environment. We're dealing with 3 different cities, of course, lack of access to good and water, decent water, as well as flood risks and all. So if we look exactly how to deal with this, Paula, next, please. We wanted to have a response through architecture for the communities that are living in here. So basically, we derived our entire architectural response from the Somali values. If we look at any Somali community value, they have core values. Number one is community. Somali communities are very social. They live together. They live in large numbers. They move together. Secondly, identity. They hold their identity and traditions very deeply, and we wanted to ensure that to be present in our design solution. And thirdly was resilience. They're very resilient in every condition. So we just wanted to restore what displacement disrupted. However, how we done that, it's going to be in the next slide. Paula, next, please. Yes. So these are the key design strategies we're trying to use. We do have a central space that is connecting all the slide before this. Paula, the one with the design strategy. Yeah, we can stay here, exactly. So we're looking at the concept of the IDPs. We wanted to make sure the new design spaces brought back what they already had, which is the values we just explained, and then to create a self-sufficient resilience community that could move forward, because we cannot address the same issues every day. So we wanted to empower them with what they already had. One of those basic things was number one, healthy community, focusing on courtyards, identity, and self-sufficiency. If we look back into the Somali culture, trees have been very important in the Somali culture. They hold unique value, and that value addresses different conditions. So Somali communities normally do hold trees in a different scenarios. They come under it. It's kind of a symbolism for community as well. So since we're working on a courtyard cluster system, we wanted to make sure our cluster system focuses on environmental conditions as well. So placing a tree at the center was one of the ways we could have done that. It allows for shade and it allows for communities to bond within themselves before they move out to the neighboring, adjacent neighboring communities. Paula, next, please. Yes, so looking at our scale, we're moving from the small shelter scale into we're moving from the macro to micro scale. We wanted these newly displaced communities who have been forcefully exiting their homes to feel at peace and integrate with the city they're inhabiting. So number one was to form a unique bond with the existing city. And secondly was to have a sustainable cluster that could work on its own with full sufficiency, be it environmental, be it social, be it financial. And lastly was the shelter itself. The shelter was providing different low technology solutions that could withstand all the harsh climates and also stay durable for the upcoming years. So if we move forward, the way we have integrated that and the approach we have used, making sure it aligns with the Somali values, which we mentioned, resilience, community, and identity. Paula is going to go next and explain that on urban approach.
So we wanted to try to integrate the sites that we were given for the scenarios with the existing surroundings. So firstly, we tried to see the geometry, the constraints, and the roads that already exist in the area and try to integrate that into our site. So we tried to create an urban infrastructure inside each site, given like the scales for main roads and smaller roads, integrating it with the surrounding areas as well. So what already exists in the area, be it a mosque, a school, a hospital, to see what we would need in each site. And so we could give these IDP populations a sense of community as well through this idea of courtyards that Mariam already mentioned. We create that through these clusters that could have a diversity of size, be it a 4, a 6, an 8, or it can be in different directions or side or have more areas integrated into them and the water facilities as well. So we want to have one latrine per 20 people. So we try to integrate that idea as well into the cluster and the plots. For that, we are using this idea of cluster that grows and can adapt to each site, and always having a courtyard inside that can be semi-private. And after we're going to show how we do the shading as well. So we try to keep these housing blocks shorter, no more than 100 meters, to have it within a walkable distance. Wherever possible, we want to create these common use areas where people can do their like livelihoods. As we've seen in some scenarios, they are farmers, in others they create livestock. So maybe these areas where they can have this for their profit as well. Creating areas inside as well that relate to the idea of the souks, to have the street markets, and areas where they don't have many public facilities. We want to create like community centers or mosques, and also have supply distributions that we've seen some NGOs that might come into the sites to supply them with food or anything they might need. And also keeping to the brief with the idea of having a water facility or a latrine no more than 50 meters away from each plot. So for that, we try to adapt this concept into each site. So for Baidoa, we have the smallest of the sites with the smallest population is a pastoralist community. So we try to include these common urban areas, livelihood areas, for them to create their livestock, while also keeping them, having them this idea of the markets in the main streets. We have identified that there are no markets that are available in the surrounding site, even though this site is quite close to the Barbakar IDP site, so they already have access to some public facilities like schools and a mosque. And we try to adapt this site as well, for example, to have the communal space here in the bottom relating to the already existing mosque. In Dule, we have, I think, the trickiest of the scenarios because we can't use for the long term these two bottom sites. So we try to add them as much as possible, this livelihood common space that we were talking about. This community is mainly of farmers. So we included big areas for farming around this too, plus there we won't have long tenure. While on the bigger side, we're trying to include most of the plots for the housing and also have, sorry, this market idea and creating a mosque inside the site. And for Bosasu, we have probably the biggest site, but we also have the harshest condition. So we try to include this common urban areas around the plot to create a barrier from this more harsh climate while also keeping the idea of the markets and the main roads. And this one, we're creating a bigger communal space area because it is in the Posaso City extension and there's not much around it yet. So moving from the scale of the urban, we're going into our shelter approach. So initially, we were seeing the shelter as a single unit, but we saw that this gives a lack of variety and a lack of adaptability to the households and what their needs might be. So our idea for the shelter is to work with a unit that would be half a shelter. So to each shelter, we would have 2 units that can create and generate a variety of placements in the plots and creating different internal courtyards within each plot as well. So for the units, we are thinking to have them through all the phases of the shelter. So they can be a transitional shelter and move into a more permanent shelter. For that, we are using wooden structure that can be built on the emergency phase, and future we would be infilling it with more long-standing wall panels, but in the beginning it could be use more of the IOM materials that are already in use. So for the unit, we are thinking of it in a modular way. So we can have a wall module, an access door, a window, or for natural ventilation, all within the modules that will be there from the beginning, as well as modules for the roof. So a normal roof, a photovoltaic roof, and this idea of humidity harvesting roof. So the humidity harvesting is an idea that we are looking to more technological solutions that could add to this idea of the simple architecture that we are doing for the shelters that can be built from the local knowledge, their know-how, be a simple architecture, but how can we add that and give them a better standing for resilience in the long term? So for example, in Bosaso, we've seen that they don't get much rain throughout the year. So, but they are really close to the sea and then they have a high humidity. So maybe a humidity harvest system could be a good idea to give them access to water. And then when you're looking into the system as well, we've also included the veranda system that it can be used both for the shelters around the shelter to create an area for an outdoor kitchen or an area for them to do things outside the house and in the shade, but as well as been used to shade the courtyard, around the courtyard. So for that, we are using Somali traditions using the colorful fabrics that you can see in the image. We're trying to keep to colors that are more used in Somali traditions and Somali clothing. And we are also giving it a variety of sizes. So we can be one unit is the 140 by 140, but it could also be 140 by 280 to give this variety and more shade in places that might need. This variety as well also happens in how we can place the units on the plot. So we have here ideas that we've tried out with horizontal layout, vertical layout. We've tried to always keep these units not touching so we can create this interior private courtyard that we see here in every shelter. So we give them a space for their daily needs, or even like we've seen some of the PDFs that we were reading that during the night it gets too hot inside the shelters. So maybe people stay outside a little longer before the house cools down. And we see this placement for the plots as the ideal cluster is the one that we are working with. And it creates the shelter unit, a private internal courtyard, an outside kitchen. And these ideas will give us the possibility to grow for the future. And like if the household needs to add another unit or add another area in the future or have a private latrine. So everything would fit into this plot that is 7 by 14 meters. So we are working with a plot of around 100 square meters. And we can create something like this. that would be the ideal cluster and the shading systems with the fabrics and the internal courtyard around the tree. Mohammed will explain this climate data analysis.
Yes, following the architectural concept presented by Mariam and Paula, I will focus on the climate analysis and the technical strategies we explored to support the project. We started by analyzing the climate data of the area, in particular looking at rainfall, humidity, wind, and solar radiation. And we find out that in Bosaso, and in the next, as showed in the next slide, that Bosaso received very little rain during the year. This make water availability a very critical issues in this city. So considering this challenge, we started to explore alternative water source. One potential solution is to extract water directly from the humidity in the air, given that Bosaso has a relatively high humidity as shown in this slide. And considering wind and close and the city is close to the sea, we believe that this if this strategy, if used, could be a reliable, sustainable solution to water source in the city. And another thing that we try to understand in the next slide is the use of the photovoltaic panels on the roof. And in order to make the system energy self-efficient, we think to use the photovoltaic on the roof. Additionally, we explored the idea of orienting the roof in different direction to allow more flexibility in the design and to give the shelters a distinct identity. And the good news in the next slide is that the energy production remain almost the same across all four orientations of the roof, so giving us design freedom without compromising energy efficiency that is essential for off-grid solutions. In the next slide, we did a diagram that summarizes our environmental strategies by showing how the building interact with the natural elements to provide comfort, efficiency, and resilience. One of the main challenges that is in this context, as already mentioned, is the water scarcity, especially in Bosaso. For this reason, we designed two complementary water collector system, a humidity harvesting tower that's showing in this slide in the top of the roof that will extract water from the humidity of the air. And the second one is the rain harvesting system using the roof. Another thing that we did in this study, in the next slide, is the study in the material and finding a way to transform traditional material to smart solutions, to smart material. And we wanted to understand their advantages and disadvantages at first in terms of climate performance, local know-how, and availability. And after in this slide, we are also showing the material that we evaluated, that are materials that are already available in the three cities. So in the next slide, after we identified the main weakness of material currently in use in building, we started looking at the other materials that could help improve performance. The idea was not to replace traditional materials entirely, but to find ways to enhance or to improve them using what we already have available in the region. So, for example, to improve the noise and the hot overheating of the metal roof, we propose to add a suspended ceiling and with the soft materials. This approach allow to build on local knowledge while improving comfort and durability and sustainability and reinforcing the value of traditional techniques and local available materials. And for each city, in the next slide, we Then we try to move to identify for each city. If you can go to the next slide, please, Paula.
This one?
Okay, and then we move it to identify for each city materials that are suitable. Yes, nope, the previous one.
Sorry.
Yes, this one. Thank you. The selection is based on the climate condition, local availability, construction know-how, and we created flex. I think that it's the next one. We created flexible combinations of materials that we can adapt to different phases of construction. For example, in Posaso, we can start with the compacted earth floor and upgrade it to stone or cement as resources become available, while might be for the walls might be used cement brick or stabilized blocks, earth blocks. For the roof, we can use the metallic roof primarily because they make it easier to build a ventilated roof, offer a solid base to photovoltaic installation, and ensure good proofing. And in the next slide, we moved from general evaluation to detailed analysis and calculation. We started testing different wall configuration, always using material that are already common in the area, like compressed earth blocks. The goal was to explore how traditional materials can be transformed into high performance ones through passive design strategies by adjusting thickness, adding air layer gap, or combining layers. We find ways to significantly improve thermal performance without moving away from local construction methods. And next slide, Paula, please. And as last thing we added to this presentation in this slide are the challenges and next steps that we are thinking about and we are facing and we are thinking about. Thank you for your attention, and we are happy to hear from your feedback.